Hey everybody, welcome and um, how's it going? It's now our literal last week until June, and a lot of things coming up in the news, and a lot of things coming up everywhere. But I wanted to hop on early here, and I may make this um, the 1 to 1:30 slot. We have a research meeting later on today about the racial disparities in mental health. So, wanted to be available now and do a quick update on everything. Um, as you all know, we are doing uh, social work, the Empowering Profession book, and we're in the middle of chapter 1. So, kind of defining what a social worker does and who are social workers. So, um, this Dubois and Miley defines social workers as professional helpers. It puts that in quotes. And what that looks like is social workers do apply and get a license. You actually cannot call yourself a social worker till you have completed your degree and passed the licensure exam. So that's some of the stuff that comes up with um, doing what we do. Um, More detailed definition underneath, as you see, to demonstrate genuine concern and positive regard for others. We get a lot of that in our code of ethics. Also, to possess personal qualities that support work with others. Sometimes that's a lot of what we learn in our training. So, to become a generalist social worker, you learn how to do things in the trainings that are offered and stuff that we do. So, um, in this class, we do cover the Code of Ethics, and that is a National Association of Social Workers Code of Ethics. So, this actually covers every state, whichever city you guys are going to practice from, it will cover you. Your state may have other more detailed code that you follow, but the National Code of Ethics is important and helps us do this last thing on there that says we value working in partnerships. So a lot of times, maybe doing case management, doing the things that we do as a social worker, and helping get people access to housing, to a food pantry, to some of the many things that are available, and things to be considered there. So, this is the details of generalist social work, and that's what you learn how to do during your bachelor's level of social work, to be a generalist practitioner. So, to help everybody and anybody that's in need, and detailing how you're going to help them. But at first, we start out as an advocate and have the ability to connect people with resources, do case management. Even in the state of Ohio, your BSW LSW allows you to make assessments and be signed off on your supervisor's signature, and then also to do some therapy. So in generalist practice, we utilize generic practice processes, recognize the potential for change at multiple systems levels. We also view behavior in context of social environments, and then integrate direct practice, social policy, and research. So a lot of the stuff we do is driven by research. That's what I've always liked about the social work field, and why I continued on for my master's and then my doctorate, because I do appreciate the new research that comes out about things that help us live a better life. And then by balancing research and then practicing a little and see the issues coming up with like our monetary system right now, it's a big piece that's coming up, and why it's hard for people to afford food and housing. and advocating for ways that we can change some of that. Next slide with the purpose of social work. They show 4 connections here. So first one being enhancing social function of individuals, groups, and families, organizations, and communities. So you can do group social work, also link client systems with needed resources, improve the operation of the social work service delivery network, and then promote social justice through development of social policy. So again, kind of getting into the research, and when you have a specific finding, help with policies that guide those things. Some of the social work goals we have here. So I like to ask social workers enhance the people's capacities to resolve problems, cope, and function effectively. We also, in our case management, link clients with needed resources and then improve the service delivery network. On your first paper, it's only a few pages, but you can do the search mentioned why to be a social worker and write why you want to be a social worker. Things, maybe it was a family member in your life, maybe it was somebody you've seen doing social work that inspired you, or maybe even a social worker that helped you out in your life. And so making sure to detail those in the paper, and then find some good articles that show what the social workers do and how those things help out. So here's some of the basic human needs. This is what I often associate with case management as a social worker. So it sounds simple to be a case manager, but sometimes this is the most important thing you do as a social worker, because it's hard to provide therapy if somebody is not taken care of, if their basic needs aren't cared for, if they don't feel safe, things of that nature. So some of the universal basic needs, food, water, shelter, housing, motivational needs, to finish different grade levels, to get a GED, to go to a trade school, to apply for college, like things that get you into the job market and becoming self-supporting. Lifespan needs. This could be like making sure lifespan development is going okay. When I worked at Lighthouse Youth Services for 7 years, one of the big programs was called Help Me Grow, and that's a federally funded program to make sure kids are developing properly. If they're premature, that they get the nutrition they need to get the services they need. Identify developmental needs. So that would be with like Help Me Grow. Cultural strengths. So we always want to enter in to working with folks with a strengths perspective. So finding what is an important cultural strength in their area and serving them with that. Also, the physical environment. So a lot of times as social workers, we assess the area around them. What resources are local? Is there a food pantry there? If they're lacking food, is there affordable housing coalitions to help them get into a more affordable house? And even subsidies if needed. During coronavirus, a lot of us needed a subsidy just to get through the year of 2020, which was now, 2 years and a month ago when the pandemic started, but it really affected a lot of people. Social justice and then world living. So those are 2 other things, that we identify with. How to make the world a better place, how to get people access to these basic needs, and make sure. In Michigan, up in Flint, when they had the water crisis, a lot of social workers were the advocates to get the water to the people, those who didn't have cars to go drive and go get it. Case managers would get it to them. So now here's some of the different social institutions listed. These are straight from your book. And how we did a function with our social work practice and license. So the first one being the family institution. That's the institution, the primary personal care function and mutual assistance system between children and parents and between family unit and society. So we work within the family institution and see how all of these connect, because then there's next the educational institution. So from like age 4, 5, or 6, when you start either kindergarten or first grade, that's how we kind of connect people to resources. Sometimes there's even school lunches offered at these places. When the pandemic started and people that didn't have school lunches were suffering, they made sure to do more of a home delivery system, especially where I used to work at St. Leo's and get the food to the people. The economic institution, again, all of these are interconnected. And we'll see how in systems theory, everything in social work is interconnected. So with education, we had socialization and preparation for a productive participatory citizenship. Again, that word comes up. How do we become self-supporting? Economic institution, so the allocation or distribution of resources, really basic resources at first. So again, food, water, shelter. Up here in Ohio, we do get very cold, so you do need housing. Really October through April. There are a lot of veterans that choose to live outdoors from May until September when there's not a freeze, but that's their choice. Social workers still work with them to get them into a space that is safe. The political institution, because sometimes that's how those resources are divvied out. The authoritative allocation of public social goals and values. Also the religious institution. So that's where a lot of social work started. So people mention that where the promotion of personal meaning and understanding of ultimate concerns are. And the final institution here is the social welfare institution. We'll see how all of these are connected with all the functions. And in the social welfare institution, there's the provision of supports to sustain or attain social functioning. So again, as a social worker, connecting people to all of those. The next topic in Chapter 1 is social welfare. So the social welfare institution responds to several things: the health, education, and well-being needs of societal members, also the views about social welfare, either residual or institutional. Some examples of fields of social work practice they list in here, and these are important because as you get further along in your degree, you may want to choose to specialize in one of these, and that's important. So finding ways you'll specialize in one of these. Family and children's services, I've done work in that area for anywhere between 7 and 3 more years at Claremont Recovery Center. So 7 to 10 years I did work with family and children's services. Health and rehabilitation, I worked at the Adolescent Recovery Center at Claremont Recovery Center. So that was a big piece to get sober and rehab there. We also did mental health, which is listed here. So a lot of times mental health and addiction services are offered together because it's a combination of the two, or otherwise known as a dual diagnosis. There's also occupational social work, so helping people get gainful employment and connecting them with jobs, services. And finally, housing. That's a big one. As I mentioned here, we have 6 to 7 months where we have a freeze and pretty cold weather that is dangerous, and it's hot for 2 of the summer months. So you're talking 9 to 10 out of the 12 months. You need housing, even if you want to live outside in a tent. So we have a lot of offerings for people struggling with housing. The price of housing has gone up a ton. That's something I do want to talk about later on in the week, and maybe even as we finish up here today, because housing prices have really, with the pandemic, gotten worse. since they printed a lot of the money, the value of the dollar has become less. So now it's twice as much dollars to buy gas and twice as much dollars to buy food and shelter. So the inflation started 2 years and 2 months ago. Those wonderful stimulus checks we got, they were exciting at the time, I'm not going to lie. But when we have $2-3 trillion in circulation in our system, and then that amount is doubled almost to like $6-7-8 trillion, their worth has gone down. So it's harder to buy things that are important. So examples of fields of social work practice: information and referral, income maintenance, several things going on here. I want to cover the housing and housing prices after pandemic have been a lot, and it's definitely been a challenge to a lot of people, and there's a lot of news about that. It does look like some of them are saying the housing market could go back to the pre-pandemic lows and concerns. This one was a few months ago, so I'll go ahead and play that because you can look up some of the housing on Zillow and what it's done, and the video that helps to describe it. See if this lets me in.
Zillow is a company of entrepreneurs. We care very deeply about the consumer, and we're data geeks. It's the core of everything we do.
We are voracious consumers of American Community Survey, the decennial census. Open data is part of Zillow's DNA.
We started Zillow 10 years ago with the mission of empowering consumers with information and data around what is the most expensive and often most emotional purchase of their entire lifetime. So much is tied into that decision, and we want to make sure that consumers armed with data are starting on their best foot.
We started out with every single address in the United States back in 2005, and a mission to attach to that address every single bit of information about it.
Step one is finding the absolute best sources of data from trusted resources that we can partner with, the basic email address, and then take that data and build it into products that consumers can use.
Government data products, and particularly the American Community Survey, are really integral to our economic operations here. Our job is to go out and pull in all that information.
Information on just about every home in America that comes from a number of sources, including the Census Bureau.
What's really important about census data products is they're telling us about the people who live in the homes, not just about the homes themselves. Economic data: are you unemployed, are you married, are you single, incomes, who you're living in the dwelling with, how many are millennials, where are those millennials moving, why are they moving there. Really important with the housing market, and they're not knowable from the data that Zillow collects on its own. And that's where census data is incredibly important. We then turn around and create analytic products on top of it, like home valuations or housing indices, or things that aren't in that raw data, but are things that we create. And we then turn around and provide that for free.
How much of a mortgage can I afford? How much do I need to save for a down payment?
Whether now is a good time to buy or sell.
So that's a good place if you ever go to Zillow.com to look up your current rental or housing prices in your local area. Some people argue they made this housing boom occur. So this is hopefully because they've raised interest rates to get a mortgage recently, this will cool off the hot market.
Compared to gig speed from Xfinity, your internet is... Sheila is incorrect. Your speeds are slower than Xfinity, which has fast, reliable internet. Unbeatable internet, only from Xfinity.
Welcome back to Power Lunch. Existing home sales fell for the third straight month in April to the lowest level since the start of the pandemic, while prices don't show any signs of coming down. Diana Olick has the details. Diana?
Well, Kelly, both higher mortgage rates and the ongoing shortage of homes for sale are taking their toll on existing home sales, which were down over 2% month to month, down nearly 6% from a year ago, and as you said, the slowest pace since June of 2020. And that month was artificially low because it was at the start of the pandemic before sales suddenly took off. Now, the supply of listings continues to weigh on the market, down over 10% from a year ago. But rising interest rates also now factoring in. These sales numbers represent closings, so signed contracts in February and March when rates were rising. The average rate on the 30-year fixed mortgage started February at 3.66%, ended March at 4.78%. It is now hovering around 5.45%, which is why the Realtor's chief economist, Laura Jun, says he expects sales to drop further because higher rates haven't fully done their damage yet. Tight supply continues to fuel prices. The median price of an existing home sold in April, $391,200, another record high, and an increase of nearly 15% from a year ago. Of course, that is skewed by what's selling, mostly on the higher end where there's more supply. While sales will be weaker going forward, so far we're not seeing any let up in those prices, likely because of that supply situation. For those who can afford the little that's out there, the competition, real estate agents tell me, is still very strong. Back to you guys.
Diana, why are the builder stocks up despite this report and given everything that's going on with rates and prices?
Well, part of it is because of that supply situation we're talking about. If there's low supply in the existing market, then buyers have nowhere to go but to the new construction market. But also it's because these builder stocks have been so beaten down, they've got nowhere to go but up. They're down 30% year to date.
Wow. All right, Diana, thank you very much. Diana Olick.
So that is part of the issue with money printing and some of the challenges that have come with it. Housing, a lot of times, is the first place that we as social workers will run into our clients. And it could be some of the fields of social work with the book describes information and referral. So maybe they come to us for an assessment, for info and a referral to an addiction services place. That could be why they don't have any money for housing. Income maintenance, that could be with the recession or maybe a recent divorce. It's hard for somebody to pay for themselves and their family. Aging services, that's another big one. In hospice is where I volunteer on the weekends, and I'll sit overnight with somebody who's usually with 6 months or less to live. And that's quite a large part of the population now. So there's a huge need for social workers in the geriatric population. School social work, that's another specialty area that you can get into. A lot of people get graduate courses completed to do this, and a master's of social work. But it can be done with the LSW, excuse me, and a BSW. So school social work, there's a huge need. Juvenile and adult corrections is another example of fields that you can get into, a specialty area that you may choose to get into. And then finally, community development. That's one last one that's important and is kind of more of the macro. We'll talk about micro social work, where you work with individuals and families and one-on-one, and then macro, where you work more with the community and making sure there's those resources to the individuals in the community. And that's a big thing for social work. Last slide for today is I want to give you guys time to read all of the chapter. I'll blow this up a little bit because it is harder to see when it's this small. So there is, I'm actually going to play the slide. So the field and family and children's services, some of the example of the services are family preservation, family counseling, foster care and adoption is a big one, especially folks that can't have a child. Daycare for those that do have children, have to work to pay for them. And then prevention of child abuse and neglect. That's a big child and family services field that we're offering 2 specialty classes in here at Central State next year in the 22-23 school year. And then prevention of domestic violence. That's another big one that comes up. The second area being health and rehabilitation. You have hospital social work. That is one that probably pays the most. We have public health work, maternal health work, vocational rehabilitation, and then hospice care. Now with mental health, you do have several mental health clinics. A day treatment for drug and alcohol addiction, and then community integration. The last 2 on here that are in your chapter, there's the information and referral that we mentioned. So you have provision of information on resources, publication of community directories. A lot of times they have social work interns make new directories for updated info. First call services, and then emergency relief with crisis management. So you'll have social workers that actually talk an individual off the ledge when they may be attempting to commit suicide, and working with individuals to calm down an emergency that's going on. The last piece is the occupational social work. So that has EAP programs, the employee assistance programs. There's also treatment for work-related stresses, job relocation programs, and then retirement planning. So that's some of the stuff that folks see what's going on, and some of the areas. So we'll finish these last 4 slides on Friday, trying to keep up with that pace of a chapter in every week. It's really 1.2 chapters a week because our 16-week semester is truncated to a 10-week summer session. So again, if you have questions, email and call and send a link, and I will see you all on the last day of the week.